Tari never imagined a simple social media post could reopen wounds he thought had healed. Months ago, his ex-girlfriend had posted, "Know your worth, queens. Don't settle for less." It was just another motivational quote floating online, until you remembered it came from the woman who'd rejected your proposal in front of strangers. The same woman you'd loved, supported, and built dreams with. When Tari saw that post, something in him shifted. He didn't argue or post a rant. He simply liked it and commented, "Kings too." That tiny, quiet clapback changed everything. 7 months earlier, Tari had been on top of the world. He'd been with Lena for 4 solid years, living together for 2. They weren't perfect, but he believed they had something real. They talked about marriage, children, and growing old together. He'd helped her pay off debts, stayed by her side when her father was sick, and watched her build her career from scratch. So when he decided to propose, it wasn't impulsive, it was love meeting intention. He'd saved 6 months' salary for the ring, a simple, elegant solitaire Lena herself had once admired in a shop window. Nothing extravagant. Tari wasn't rich, but he was consistent, hardworking, and deeply sincere. On the day he planned to propose, he took her to the botanical gardens, the same spot where their story had begun. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft gold and pink. He went down on one knee, heart racing, eyes locked on hers. "Lena," he whispered, "you're my best friend, my peace. Will you marry me?" Silence. Then, a soft but firm, "No." Not a hesitant, "I need time." Not even maybe later. Just a clean, cold no. Lena said she wasn't ready. She claimed she needed to find herself, to explore what's out there. Tari's heart dropped. The people around them, families, couples, kids, turned to look. He stood there, ring in hand, trying not to fall apart in front of strangers. The car ride home felt endless. Lena looked out the window, saying nothing. When they reached their apartment, she packed a few bags. "I'll stay with Kemi for a while," she said flatly. 3 days later, she was gone. No closure, no long talk, just silence. That night, Tari scrolled through his phone aimlessly until he saw her post. A smiling selfie with a caption, "Know your worth, queens. Never settle for less." The comment section lit up. "Yes, queen, you did the right thing. Level up, sis." Tari sat there, staring at the screen in disbelief. For years of his life had been summarized as her not settling. The ring he saved for was now a joke among her friends. At 2 a.m., he tapped like and commented, "Kings too." It wasn't spiteful, it was honest. But an hour later, his comment disappeared. She deleted it. The damage, though, was already done. Their mutual friends had seen it. A few texted him privately, unsure what to say. He ignored them all. The weeks that followed were brutal. He barely ate, barely slept. He moved through life like a ghost.
Work, gym,
sleep, repeat. When he finally dragged himself to therapy, his counselor said something that stuck with him. "You've been dimming your light to make someone else comfortable." It hit hard. Tari realized he'd spent years trying to be enough for someone who was already looking elsewhere. That realization didn't heal him overnight, but it planted a seed of strength. 2 months later, he met Amira. She worked in the same accounting firm, always polite, always professional. One evening after a tough audit, she smiled and said, "You look like you need coffee or therapy. I can't offer the second one, but I know a great cafe." He laughed for the first time in weeks. That coffee led to conversations that felt easy, natural. No games. No walking on eggshells. Just connection. Amira was different. She didn't demand grand gestures. She appreciated the small things. Tari holding the door, remembering her favorite pastry, checking in when she was stressed. She listened genuinely. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he had to prove his worth. He could just be. One evening, while they watched rain from the cafe window, she looked at him and said softly, "You deserve peace, you know that?" And he believed her. 6 months later, Tari's life looked completely different. He smiled again. He was healing. And during a hike one weekend, When the wind carried laughter and sunlight over the hills, Amira turned to him, pulled out a tiny box, and said, "I know what I want."
You.
Tari froze for a second, stunned, but then laughed through tears. "Yes," he said instantly. No hesitation. Just yes. They posted a photo of themselves afterward, captioned, "Adventure partner for life." It was simple, sincere, and destined to stir up a storm he never saw coming. The photo didn't go viral, but it didn't need to. Within hours, people who once ignored Tari's posts began liking and commenting. "So happy for you, bro. You deserve this. She's beautiful, man, congrats." He smiled, scrolling through the comments. For once, the attention felt genuine. But that peace didn't last long. Around 11:43 p.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello." There was silence at first, then a shaky breath. "Are you serious right now?" Tari's chest tightened. That voice, unmistakable. "Lena," he said calmly. "6 months, Tari," she snapped. 6 months and you're engaged?" He took a breath, steady but firm.
Yes.
That's usually when people say congratulations. There was a pause, then bitterness. "To your coworker? The mousy one from accounting."
Tari sighed.
"Her name's Amira. And she's not mousy. She just doesn't need to be loud about her wins." Lena scoffed through the phone. "You're insane. We were together for 4 years. How could you move on so fast?" Tari leaned back, exhausted. "The same way you rejected my proposal in front of everyone and called it not settling." For a moment there was silence, the kind that weighs heavy. Then her voice softened, trembling. "I didn't think you'd actually move on. I thought you'd wait." That sentence hit him like a slow punch. "Wait for what, Lena?" She hesitated. Then it spilled out, the truth behind everything. "I needed to see what else was out there, okay? Kemi kept telling me about the men she met, investment bankers, lawyers, entrepreneurs. She said I was too young to settle down with the first serious guy I ever dated. I just wanted to be sure." Tari chuckled dryly. "So, I was your safety net?" "No," she stammered. "I just needed to grow, to experience things. I thought maybe after a year, we could try again." He went quiet.
A year.
That was her plan: leave, explore, and then come back when she'd had her fun. "You rejected me publicly," he said quietly. "You humiliated me and expected me to wait?" Lena's voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd see the post. It wasn't about you." Tari laughed under his breath. "Lena, we have 130 mutual friends. How exactly was it not about me?" She fell silent, then whispered, "You don't understand the pressure women face." She went on about online articles, self-discovery, how women who married young often regretted not exploring. "I didn't want to resent you later," she said. Tari's tone sharpened. "So, instead, you tested the market while keeping me as your backup plan?" Her silence said everything. Then came her confession, the one that made his blood run cold. "The guys Kemi introduced me to, they weren't what I expected. The banker wanted hookups. The lawyer ghosted me. The entrepreneur? He was broke." Tari exhaled slowly. "So your queen era didn't go as planned?" Lena sniffled. "I realized too late that what we had was special. I was going to reach out after a year, show I'd grown, and maybe you'd propose again." Tari shook his head in disbelief. "You mean propose again based on a lie?" She protested. "It wasn't a lie. I did grow. I learned what I wanted." He answered quietly, "Yeah. You learned you wanted your backup plan." That broke her composure. "You're making a huge mistake, Tari. She's a rebound. You're rushing this to hurt me." He kept his voice calm. "Lena, you made your choice. You ended things. You made it clear I wasn't enough. I respected that. Now I've moved on." Her tone turned sharp again. "She doesn't know you like I do." "You're right," he said. "She doesn't know the version of me that dimmed his light to make someone else comfortable. She knows the version that shows up fully, and I like him better." There was a long silence, then Lena's voice dropped to a low threat. "When you realize what you've lost and come crawling back, I won't be waiting." Tari smiled faintly. "Good. Because I won't be crawling anywhere. He ended the call, set his phone down, and exhaled deeply. He thought that was the end, that she'd finally move on. But he was wrong. The storm was only beginning. 3 days later, Amira showed him her phone. A DM had arrived from a woman named Kemi. "Hey girl," it began. "Just wanted to reach out woman to woman. I'm friends with Tari's ex. I thought you should know he's using you as a rebound." Amira read it aloud and burst out laughing halfway through. "Oh, wow, they're really doing this," she said. Tari frowned. "They?" "Yeah," she grinned. "Looks like your ex and her sidekick are trying to run PR." And that was the start of Lena's full-blown campaign. When Amira read Kemi's message, she had to pause halfway through to laugh. Wait, she said between giggles. "Listen to this. He was obsessed with Lena, proposed after hounding her for months, stalked her page, and now he's love-bombing you to make her jealous." She blinked dramatically. "Who writes like this?" "A publicist." Tari just rubbed his temples, shaking his head. "That sounds exactly like something Lena would co-sign." Amira tilted her phone thoughtfully. "They think they're exposing you, but really, they're just exposing how miserable they are." Instead of blocking Kemi immediately, she typed a calm, razor-sharp reply. "Thanks for the concern. But I'm curious, why are you more invested in my relationship than your friend's healing? How'd those setups?" She bragged about workout for her. She hit send, then set her phone down like she'd just checkmated someone in chess. 10 minutes later, Kemi blocked her. "Well, that was fast," Amira said, laughing. Tari smiled for the first time that night. "You handled that like a pro." "Please," Amira said with a grin. "Never argue with people who need chaos to feel relevant. It's their oxygen." But the next morning, the smear campaign went public. Mutual friends started texting. Distant relatives just wanted to check in. Old colleagues suddenly remembered his number. One message read, "Bro, heard you got engaged. That's quick. Man, you sure about this?" Another said, "Lena's torn up. Maybe you should talk to her before she does something drastic." Tari stared at his phone, speechless. None of these people had reached out when he was heartbroken, but now that he was healing, they wanted to intervene. He spent the next few hours watching his notifications pile up. Every concerned text carried the same underlying tone: doubt. Doubt that he'd moved on too fast. Doubt that he was truly happy. Doubt that he had the right to heal on his own terms. Finally, he posted a short message on his private account. "Funny how people who never checked on you when you were broken suddenly care when you're okay. Peace must look suspicious to the miserable." It wasn't shade, just truth. He turned off his phone and went for a jog. For once, he wasn't running from pain. He was running through it. But when he came back and showered, his phone was ringing again. Unknown number. He almost ignored it until curiosity made him answer. "Hello," he said cautiously. Silence. Then a voice he hadn't heard in weeks. Calm, but charged. "Tari, we need to talk about this like adults." He sighed. "There's nothing to talk about, Lena." Her tone shifted from firm to fragile. "You're clearly hurt and acting out. I get it. But destroying what we had over pride," he cut in sharply. "Pride," he repeated. "You mean boundaries. What we had ended the moment you decided I wasn't enough." She inhaled sharply, then said, "I made a mistake, okay? People make mistakes." Tari leaned against the wall, his jaw tight.
"Yeah.
"But your mistake wasn't rejecting me. It was thinking I'd wait around while you checked if you could do better." She went silent, then switched tactics. "So, what? You're marrying Amira out of spite? To prove something?" Tari chuckled dryly. "I'm marrying Amira because she looked at me and said yes, without hesitation, without calculation. She didn't need to compare me to a list first." Lena's tone cracked. "What about everything I did for you? When you failed your first CPA exam? When your mom was in the hospital? When you couldn't sleep for days?" Tari's voice softened. "I remember. And I was there when your dad had surgery, when you switched jobs, when your anxiety kept you up at night. That's what partners do, Lena. But love doesn't mean ownership." "You don't move this fast," she whispered, voice trembling. "This isn't you. You overthink everything." Tari smiled faintly. Maybe that's because I spent 4 years overthinking how to keep you happy instead of asking if I was. There was silence, then a small voice. Were you not happy? His chest tightened. I was happy enough, he said softly, but enough isn't enough anymore. That line hung heavy between them. Then, quietly, she said, so that's it? You're throwing away 4 years for someone you barely know. Tari exhaled slowly. No, Lena. I'm building something new with someone who chose me first, not as a fallback after testing the market. The phone went quiet again, and then came the inevitable jab. When it crashes and burns, don't say I didn't warn you. Tari smiled. If it burns, at least it'll be honest fire, not built on lies. She muttered something he couldn't catch, then the call ended abruptly. Tari set his phone down and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since that proposal, he felt closure creeping in. But closure rarely comes without chaos. 3 days later, chaos came knocking again digitally. Amira was cooking when her phone buzzed. Oh, you're gonna love this, she said, holding it up. Another message from Kemi. She just can't help herself, Tari murmured. This time, it wasn't even an accusation, it was manipulation disguised as kindness. Hey, Amira. Just looking out. Lena's really hurt. Maybe give her space and let Tari heal. He's clearly not over her. Amira laughed so hard, she nearly dropped the pan.
Heal?
From what? The peace. Tari leaned over the counter, amused. Ignore them. But Amira wasn't done. She replied one last time. Appreciate your concern, but Tari's healing just fine, mostly from bad taste in exes. Then she added a laughing emoji and blocked Kemi again. They both cracked up. You're evil, Tari teased. Nah, she said, smiling. Just fluent in self-respect. For the rest of the night, they tried to move on movies, dinner, soft laughter. But the universe wasn't done testing their calm. By the next morning, mutual friends started sending him screenshots. Group chats were buzzing. Old classmates were suddenly worried. People who hadn't liked a single post of his in years were gossiping about his engagement. And then, the final blow, someone sent him a picture. A dating profile. Lena's. Active, smiling, captioned, entrepreneur mindset. Looking for someone ambitious who can match my energy. Tari froze. The profile creation date? 2 months before his proposal. Everything he thought he'd buried was about to resurface in the most painful, public way possible. Amira held the phone out in disbelief. Tari, you need to see this. The screen showed a dating app profile, Lena's smiling face, posing like she'd just discovered independence. Her bio read, entrepreneur mindset. Looking for someone ambitious who can match my energy. No time for mediocrity. Amira scrolled down to show the date it was created, 5 months ago. Tari felt his stomach twist. 5 months ago, he muttered. That meant she'd made the profile 2 months before rejecting his proposal. Amira scrolled further, showing him screenshots her friend Rachel had sent. She's been chatting with guys this whole time, Amira said quietly. One message from Lena to some man read, I just got out of something serious. He was sweet but lacked ambition. I need a man who can provide the lifestyle I deserve. Tari's chest tightened. Another read, I outgrew him. He was comfortable with mediocrity. I need excellence. That word, mediocrity, burned in his brain. For years of loyalty and sacrifice reduced to that single insult. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, then laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. She was planning an exit strategy while I was planning our future, he said softly. Amira touched his arm gently. You don't have to look at the rest. But Tari shook his head. No, I need to see all of it. I need to know exactly who I was loving. They scrolled through more screenshots, one showing Lena updating her profile just 3 days ago, after their phone call. The new bio said, Phoenix rising from the ashes. Know your worth and add tax. Tari laughed again, this time genuinely, a tired, almost relieved laugh. Add tax, huh? Guess humility's still out of stock. Amira grinned faintly. At least you're not her target audience anymore. He smiled back. Thank God for that. That night, Tari sat on his couch, processing everything. The irony was painful. The same person who told him she needed to explore had been doing exactly that while pretending to be unsure. But instead of anger, all he felt now was release. The truth had set him free. The next morning, Lena texted from yet another new number. Tari, I've been thinking. I'm willing to forgive you for moving on so fast if we can start fresh. I understand now that you needed to feel wanted. I accept my part in that. We can work through this. Tari stared at the message, speechless. Forgive him? For healing? He chuckled, screenshot the text, and posted it on social media with the caption, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." Then he added, "Grateful for the lessons, and even more grateful for the future." Underneath the post, he tagged Amira with, "Thanks for choosing me first. Always." The response was immediate. Friends flooded the comments. Bro, I had no idea. Wait, she was on dating apps? You dodged a bullet. Even his cousin, who'd once defended Lena, texted, "Well, this is awkward. Guess she left out a few details." Tari's phone buzzed nonstop for hours. He wasn't gloating, just finally reclaiming his voice. For the first time, people saw the full story, not Lena's filter version. But Lena didn't take the exposure quietly. Within hours, she started posting Instagram stories, long paragraphs about toxic men weaponizing vulnerability, and how women are demonized for having standards. Tari saw one clip of her crying on camera, saying, "I was manipulated, gaslit, and painted as a villain for wanting more." The irony was almost comical. The same woman who'd been dating multiple men while still with him was now calling herself the victim. But karma, as they say, has perfect timing. Kemi, the loyal friend who had helped Lena craft her dating profiles, decided she'd had enough. She leaked screenshots into their old friend group chat. Real, time-stamped evidence of everything. Not just messages, but an actual spreadsheet. Tari nearly dropped his phone when he saw it. There, in black and white, was Lena's evaluation sheet, a literal ranking system for men she was talking to. Each man was scored by income, appearance, lifestyle potential, and emotional stability. Tari's name sat right there. Rank 4 in stability, rank 11 in lifestyle potential. Number 11 out of 15. Above him, a venture capitalist, a lawyer, a fitness influencer, and a supposed entrepreneur. But the top pick, the venture capitalist, had lost everything in a crypto crash weeks before Tari's proposal. So that's why she said no, Tari muttered. She thought she could upgrade. Amira raised an eyebrow. Guess her investment didn't age well. The group chat exploded with shock. People who'd once defended Lena were furious. "You made us pick sides over lies," one friend wrote. "You manipulated everyone," another added. Kemi dropped one final bombshell before leaving the chat. "She used me too. I'm done covering for her." The fallout was instant. Lena started posting vague quotes about fake friends and betrayal. Her follower count plummeted. Screenshots of her spreadsheet began circulating online. And then came the one message that finally broke the internet, a screenshot of her saying, "I'm waiting for my boyfriend to propose so I can see the ring before deciding." When Tari saw that final screenshot, "I'm waiting for my boyfriend to propose so I can see the ring before deciding," he couldn't help it. He laughed. Not out of bitterness this time, but out of disbelief that he'd ever tried to prove himself to someone like that. Amira looked at him, smiling gently. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said softly. "Actually, I'm more than okay." For the first time in years, he didn't feel the sting of being rejected. He felt free. Completely, utterly free. Lena, however, was spiraling. She posted nonstop for days, screenshots, rants, emotional videos with captions like, "People love to villainize women when they set boundaries," and "You can't cancel a queen." But people weren't buying it anymore. Not after Kemi's leaks. Every new post brought more backlash, more laughter, more memes. One comment under her tearful video read, "Sis, the spreadsheet wasn't a boundary, it was a business plan gone wrong." It racked up thousands of likes. Behind the scenes, things got worse for her. The men she'd been dating while with Tari began sharing their own receipts, messages of her pretending to be single, flirting, planning business trips. One even exposed voice notes where she said, "I'm just waiting to see what Tari offers first before I decide anything serious." The internet had no mercy. Threads, memes, and TikToks flooded timelines. Hashtag Know Your Worth Queens was trending again, but this time, sarcastically. Tari didn't respond publicly anymore.
He didn't need to.
The truth was doing the talking for him. Amira made him promise not to feed the drama. "Let people see her actions," she said. "We don't argue with chaos." He agreed. They muted their notifications and focused on each other. Long walks, dinner dates, laughter. But peace rarely lasts when someone thrives on attention. 2 days later, security at Tari's apartment called. "Sir," the guard said, "there's a woman here demanding to see you. Says it's an emergency." Tari's heart sank. "What's her name?" "Lena." He closed his eyes. "Is she hurt?"
"No, sir."
"Just angry." He exhaled slowly. "Then it's not an emergency. Please ask her to leave. If she refuses, call the police." He hung up, heart pounding but calm. A few minutes later, the guard called again. She'd left, but not quietly. Lena had caused a scene in the parking lot, screaming about betrayal, demanding closure, calling Tari a narcissist. A few residents filmed it. One video made it to TikTok that same night with the caption, "Ex causes drama at fiancé's apartment after realizing her backup plan got engaged." Within 24 hours, it had nearly 1 million views. The comments were brutal. "She rejected him and still wants attention? This is why you don't play games with people's hearts." Bro upgraded to peace. By morning, Tari's phone was flooded again, but this time with messages of support. Strangers were congratulating him, thanking him for showing that men could have self-respect too. One comment stuck with him. "Kings too. You said it months ago and you lived it." He smiled quietly. It felt like a full-circle moment. The same words he'd written under her post had now become his story's final message. But Lena still wasn't done. The next day, he got a final text from yet another new number. "Congrats, Tari. You won. You destroyed my reputation and turned everyone against me. Hope you're happy with your downgrade. When she cheats on you, and she will, remember that you had someone who loved you enough to be sure. But your ego couldn't wait. Enjoy your mediocre life with your mediocre wife." He stared at it for a moment, then simply forwarded it to his lawyer friend. "Keep documenting," he said. His lawyer replied with a thumbs up. They'd already discussed a restraining order if Lena kept contacting him. Tari didn't respond to her text, not because he didn't have words, but because peace didn't require explanations. That night, he and Amira cooked dinner together, laughing as they burned the garlic bread. She left him little notes in his lunchbox, and he surprised her with flowers just because it was Tuesday. They weren't chasing perfection, just peace. Tari finally understood what love was supposed to feel like. Quiet, honest, consistent. No games, no calculations, no backup plans. Just two people choosing each other every single day. Lena was right about one thing. They did deserve each other. Just not in the way she imagined. As for Lena, word spread that she'd moved back to her hometown, deleted most of her social media, and vanished from the spotlight she once lived for. Kemi posted a vague quote about growth through pain, but everyone knew what it meant. Weeks passed. The chaos around Lena faded from Tari's life like background noise. He didn't search her name, didn't check social media, didn't care about updates. He was done letting her shadow take space in his peace. When people brought her up, he'd just smile and say, "I wish her well." And he meant it. Healing, he'd learned, wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming your energy and refusing to live inside someone else's drama. Life with Amira became beautifully ordinary. They woke up early, made breakfast together, joked about work, and spent lazy evenings watching shows neither of them paid full attention to. Sometimes, Tari would catch himself just staring at her. This woman who never asked him to prove his worth, who loved him exactly as he was. One night, as they cleaned up dinner, she whispered, "You know, it's kind of poetic." She said no to a good man, so you could say yes to the right woman. Tari smiled. Best rejection I ever got. Meanwhile, the internet continued doing what it always does, turning chaos into entertainment. The old Know Your Worth Queens post resurfaced as a meme. Someone had edited it with screenshots of Lena's dating profile underneath. The caption read, "Know your worth, but maybe don't build a spreadsheet about it." It spread fast. Tari didn't share it, didn't comment, didn't even laugh publicly, but when Amira showed it to him, he chuckled. "The internet never forgets," he said. "Nope," she replied, "but it does take notes." Every now and then, he'd still get the occasional message from a mutual friend, from a random stranger, from someone who just wanted to say, "Thank you for telling your story." Many men wrote about finding strength to walk away from manipulative relationships. Women commented that they'd learned to look deeper at their own patterns. The story had grown beyond Tari and Lena. It had become a mirror for anyone who'd ever been undervalued and still chose peace. Then came a day Tari never expected, an email from a law firm representing Lena. The subject line read, "Notice of defamation and emotional distress." He read it twice, almost laughing. She was demanding $15 for reputation damages. 15. Amira said, nearly choking on her tea. $15? Tari smirked. Guess my peace is more expensive than her dignity. His lawyer friend drafted a one-line reply. All statements are factual and supported by documented evidence. Further contact will result in legal action. They never heard from her again. After that, everything quieted down. No more calls. No more messages. No more late-night drama. Tari's nights were peaceful again. He slept easily, laughed freely, and finally stopped flinching whenever his phone buzzed. He realized that closure doesn't always come from an apology. Sometimes it comes from silence, from simply outgrowing the noise. Months later, on a soft Sunday morning, Tari sat on the balcony with Amira, coffee in hand, sunlight warming his face. "You ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "All the time." She leaned on his shoulder. "What's your biggest lesson from all of it?" He thought for a moment, then said quietly, "That love isn't about who shines the brightest. It's about who stays when the lights go out." Amira smiled. "You sound like a poet." "Nah," he said, chuckling. "Just a man who finally learned his worth." They married a few months later, small, intimate, surrounded by laughter instead of spectacle. No performance, no audience, just people who mattered. During his vows, Tari didn't promise perfection. He promised presence. "I won't always get it right," he said, voice shaking with emotion. "But I'll always choose you, not because I need to prove anything, but because peace feels like home when I'm with you." Amira wiped her tears and whispered, "Always." After the ceremony, as they stood beneath the evening sky, someone asked if he regretted anything. Tari smiled thoughtfully. "Regret," he said.
No.
"Everything that broke me built me into the man she deserves." And that was the truth. Lena's betrayal had once felt like the end, but in hindsight, it had been the beginning of everything good. Every wound had led him here, to peace, to laughter, to love without conditions. As the story closed, Tari reflected on the words that started it all, that single comment he'd once left under Lena's post, "Kings too." At the time, it was just a quiet act of defiance. Now, it had become his life's lesson. He learned that worth isn't about how loudly someone praises you, it's about how you see yourself when no one else does. And to anyone still waiting for someone who undervalued them to come back, his message was simple. Don't wait for them to see your value. Find someone who never questions it. He smiled, looked into the camera, and said softly, "Yeah, kings know their worth too." Please like, comment, and do not forget to subscribe.